Hello 3N, welcome to Tuesday's reading of Stig of the Dump. Crumbs, exclaimed the Indian. Doesn't it look real? Come on, down again, quick. They got back in through the window, bumped through the box room, clattered down the stairs, and made for the main staircase, calling out. Outside, everybody! The leopard's in the garden! Everybody out! Hunters who had been crawling under beds and giggling in closets and wardrobes made for the staircase too, and the big door was left open, and they all streamed out into the moonlit garden. In the shrubbery, shouted Barney. Leopards in the shrubbery, let's drive it out. Pirates, cowboys and shepherdesses piled into the shrubbery, whipping and crashing, and out of the corner of his eyes Barney saw something bolt out of the undergrowth and into the shadow of the house. Tally-ho, he hallooed, and sped after it along the gravel path and round the back, past glass houses and outbuildings. He heard running feet behind him. The Indian and some other hunters were on the trail too. In front of him were two big wooden gates, open and leading into a paved stable yard with buildings all round it. In there, he panted. I saw it go. He dashed through the gateway, and at least half a dozen others clattered in with him. Quick, shut the gates, don't let it get out, he heard the Indian say, and the heavy wooden doors banged behind him. But Barney stood rooted to the pavement, unable to move. The other children behind him were suddenly still and silent too. The boy dressed as the Indian gave a shaky whisper. There's two leopards. The moonlit light shone clearly on the roofs of the buildings and the checkered paving of the yard. And clearly in the moonlight, like two figures on a stage, two animal forms crouched facing each other. Both had golden, black spotted fur and long tails. But as one of the crouching beasts turned its head to glare at the hunters by the gate, its eyes flashed green and alive in the moonlight. And under the mask of the other beast, Barney recognized the white face of his sister. How long they all stood like that, Barney didn't know. Barney grasping his stone axe, but feeling as if he was turned to stone himself. Lou crouched there, desperately willing her whole body to turn into a real, live wild beast to meet his awful peril, and the real live leopard itself, because it couldn't be anything else, frightened by the hullabaloo, mystified by the strange half-beast, half-human that faced it. Cornered and angry, it was like a nightmare game, when nobody knew what the next move should be. And then Barney heard the Indian behind him another hoarse whisper, 2 cavemen! For out of the shadows at the far end of the yard appeared a figure that might have been his own reflection in a mirror. Shaggy hair, rabbit skins, and bare limbs. But this one carried a long spear with a glinting blade, and it was levelled at the real leopard. And suddenly Barney's limbs unfroze, and he whispered, Stig! The leopard shifted its gaze. It shot a glance at Barney. It looked back at the unmoving Lou. It turned to the advancing Stig and gave a low growl. Its tail twitched and it began tucking its feet under it as a cat does when it's about to charge and spring. Stig crouched too, still pointing his spear, and Barney saw that in the shadows beyond Stig was the open door of an empty stable. The leopard had decided which was the most dangerous enemy, and now kept its eyes on Stig. Barney crept forward behind it. He was almost within axe reach of its twitching tail. The leopard stopped shifting its feet. Its tail lay still for an instant. Its muscles were tense. It sprang, but as it sprang, Barney brought his axe down on the tip of its tail. Lou burst to life with a sudden roar. Stig threw himself sideways and the startled and confused leopard jumped twice as high and twice as far as it had meant to and vanished into the dark doorway of the stable. Barney hurled himself forward, slammed the lower half of the door shut, and then the upper half, and gasped, "Quick, quick, somebody bolt it!" Lou and the Indian struggled with the bolts, and at last they all sank down on the pavement, feeling exhausted and weak. The other children had now opened the gates of the yard, and the rest of the party were streaming in, chattering and asking questions. "Where's the leopard? Have you caught the leopard? Is it game over now?" "What do you mean it was a real leopard?" "Let's have another leopard hunt. It was super fun." "Why can't we have another leopard hunt?" "What do you mean the leopard's in the stable? There's the leopard." "2 leopards? Well, that's not fair. Nobody told us there were 2 leopards." "Why can't we see the other leopard in the stable? Let's set it out and have another hunt." And the boy in the Zorro suit was actually fumbling with the bolts and trying to open the door of the stable. Stig, who was standing there, rapped him over the knuckles with the haft of his spear. "All right, caveman," said Zorro crossly. "I can open the door if I want to. It's not your business." But Stig turned his spear round and threatened him with the point, and Zorro retreated, saying, "No need to get nasty." Then suddenly all the windows of the big house blazed with light again, and then the voice of Mrs. Falcon Green came from the front steps calling, "Children, you're all to come in at once. Everyone inside as quick as ever you can." She sounded as if she was almost frightened of something. As they all trooped round to the front of the entrance, they noticed a big truck in the drive, and strange men standing around, and some of the men had rifles. Mrs. Falcon Green was standing on the steps, flapping her hands. Come along, she cried. "It was so naughty of you to go outside. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just go into the hall and stand while I count you all." They stood wide-eyed in the hall as Mrs. Falcon Green slammed the big door behind her, leant against it with a white face, counted the guests, and then counted again, and muttered to herself, "Oh dear, how many should there be? Little Jonathan couldn't come because of measles, and then there's Betty who didn't answer." The children began to join in with helpful voices. "Where's the other caveman?" "Yes, there's supposed to be 2 cavemen. I saw them." "And there's 2. Please be quiet. You only confuse me," moaned Mrs. Falcon Green. She turned to a strange man in a raincoat who was standing by the door. "I think they're all here, Mr. she said. "Would you like to explain?" "Sorry to spoil your party, Kitty," said the man. "I'm from Bottom's Circus, and I'm afraid one of our animals got loose from its travelling cage, and it must be somewhere about here. But don't worry, we'll soon catch him." There were excited gasps and whistles from the children. Then Lou spoke up. "It was a leopard, wasn't it?" she said. The man looked at Lou. "Yes, girlie," he smiled, "like you, only a little bit fiercer." And Barney stepped forward. "It's all right, sir," he said. "We put it in the stables. Me and Stig and Lou. I'll help you get out if you like." Okay, 3N, I will see you tomorrow.